Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a fascinating, honestly, kind of high-stakes clash taking place right inside your kitchen. It's a battle between centuries of revered culinary tradition and the cold, hard microscopy of modern food physics. The battleground? A simple block of tofu, because how you prep it before it hits the pan determines whether you end up with a soggy, crumbly mess or perfectly golden, flavor-packed bites.
So let's just dive right into this highly counterintuitive concept. Think about it, you want a perfectly crispy golden brown crust, right? The absolute fundamental rule of crispiness is that moisture is the enemy. So why on earth would anyone suggest taking a waterlogged block of soybean curd and plunging it into a pot of boiling water to make it crispy? It sounds like madness.
But here's the thing, we are looking at a massive culinary debate. On one side, we have generations of Asian culinary tradition, championed by wok chefs who absolutely swear that boiling tofu in salt water is the ultimate secret to restaurant-quality texture. But on the other side, modern food science labs are looking at the molecular data and screaming, no, absolutely do not do this. As an impartial guide, I'm going to walk you through the evidence from both camps.
Section 1. The Culinary Case. Boiling for Crunch.
Culinary expert Kip from the Messy Vegan Cook actually explains the logic behind this perfectly. Heating the tofu forces the inner moisture to literally push its way out to the surface. It's kind of like what happens when you deep fry tempura and see all that steam escaping. Once that moisture is drawn to the surface, it evaporates or gets blotted away, leaving behind a much drier exterior that is totally primed for the wok.
So the culinary argument isn't just about a single benefit, it's really a multi-tool approach. Beyond just drawing out that internal moisture for a crispy sear, boiling in salted water firms up the structure so it won't disintegrate in, say, a heavy stew. It deeply seasons the curds from the inside out. And very practically speaking, a dry surface prevents those terrifying hot oil splashes when the tofu finally hits your pan. And the basic technique? It's remarkably straightforward. You just create a simple 2% salt solution. That's roughly 20 grams or a generous tablespoon of salt dissolved into a liter of water. Bring it to a rolling boil and then either drop your cubed tofu in to simmer or just pour that boiling salted water directly over the tofu in a heat-proof bowl for a hot soak.
Section 2. The clock. How long should you boil it?
Now, figuring out exactly how long to boil your tofu in salt water is where things get really interesting, because it depends entirely on what you plan to do with it next, and the experts vary wildly here. For a classic mapo tofu, food writer Felicity Cloak recommends a super rapid 1-minute simmer just to warm and firm the cubes. Witty Tweet Kitchen suggests 1 to 2 minutes. But if you want deeper flavor, the Messy Vegan Cook suggests 5 to 10 minutes, and cookbook author Andrea Nguyen goes all the way up to a 15-minute off-the-heat hot soak for her salt and pepper tofu. So, the crucial takeaway for your cooking: tailor your time to your dish. A quick 1 to 2 minute blanch in salt water is your go-to for keeping cubes intact during an aggressive stir-fry. But a 15-minute hot soak? That's your secret weapon when you want that brine to deeply permeate the dense tofu and season it from the inside out.
And honestly, that brings us to a massive culinary revelation. Many chefs argue that cold marinating is a total con. Seriously, have you ever soaked tofu in soy sauce overnight, only to cut it open the next day and find the center completely white and flavorless? Dense proteins just don't absorb cold liquids well. Culinary experts argue tofu absorbs flavor most efficiently when it's hot. This makes a long, hot saltwater soak the absolute foolproof seasoning secret.
Section 3. The food science twist. A structural takedown.
Okay, while chefs are singing the praises of the boiling pot, scientists are sounding a massive alarm. As comprehensive food science analysis makes incredibly clear, no, you should not boil tofu. According to rigorous lab trials, boiling doesn't actually firm up the delicate soybean matrix. Instead, it causes rapid, irreversible protein network collapse. The lab data vehemently, completely disagrees with the wok chefs.
In fact, scientists have systematically debunked the traditional reasons for boiling. First up, the blanching fallacy. Unlike some vegetables, tofu has literally no anti-nutrients that require heat to be neutralized. Second, the beanie flavor myth. Gas chromatography shows that boiling doesn't effectively remove the compounds that cause rancid off flavors. And finally, the most shocking claim of all, the water expulsion illusion.
Remember how the chefs said heat forces inner water to the surface? Well, physics dictates the exact opposite. Tofu is a highly porous protein gel. When you submerge it in boiling water, you aren't squeezing water out, you're creating an inward hydrostatic gradient. You are actively flooding the tofu.
And the data on this is undeniable. Within just 90 seconds of hitting that boiling water, the tofu's matrix acts like a giant sponge, resulting in a massive 32 to 47% spike in water absorption. Instead of drying it out for a crispy sear, you are quite literally waterlogging your primary ingredient.
It gets even worse at the molecular level. The disastrous number here is 140 degrees Fahrenheit. At this specific temperature, the soy proteins that hold your tofu together physically begin unfolding and dissolving directly into the surrounding water. You aren't just heating the tofu, you are chemically dismantling it.
The consequence of that protein meltdown is severe. The solubilization results in a shocking 68% loss of tensile strength. In simple terms, your tofu loses its structural integrity. It loses its bite resistance. It becomes a mushy shadow of its former self, completely unequipped to handle the rigorous flipping and tossing of a hot wok.
But how does this actually play out on the plate? Well, the science team ran blind taste tests with professional chefs. The traditional lab-recommended method, pressing the tofu to mechanically squeeze the water out, followed by a hot sear, scored a very impressive 8.9 out of 10. The boiled and seared tofu, a dismal 3.2. Why? Because the boiled tofu, with its matrix completely compromised, literally fragmented and fell apart the moment it made contact with the pan.
Section 4. Final culinary takeaways. Choose your path.
Ultimately, this represents a classic clash of methodologies. On one side, the chef's senses, techniques forged over centuries, relying on intuition, observation, and the undeniable reality that countless phenomenal crispy meals have been prepared using a salted, hot water bath. On the other side, the lab's data, cold, hard measurements of tensile strength and hydrostatic gradients, proving that, on a molecular level, boiling is a destructive act.
So the choice is entirely yours. The next time you pull a block of tofu from your fridge, you have to decide your allegiance. Will you trust the romantic, flavor-building traditions of the ancient wok, or will you follow the pristine, structural logic of the food physics lab? I highly encourage you to run your own experiment in your kitchen and taste the paradox for yourself. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy cooking.